You're a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. After taking a couple of months of a break from Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, I am coming back with my monthly tier lists for the ranked side of the game, of course. Now these tier lists will be posted every first 10 days of each month, and I will be talking about the 3 top tiers and the decks in them, of course, with giving for each deck a brief explanation as to why I decided to put them there. Excuse me if I'm a bit rusty for this first month since I just now came back to Duel Links, and correct me if I did make a mistake in the comments down below. Like the video and subscribe to the channel for more of these tier lists. Without further ado, let's get to the ranked tier list of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links for November. Starting off with tier 3, we have an old usual in these tier lists, Cyber Dragons. So how come Cyber Dragons are still tier 3? In my opinion, the deck is one of the best fusion decks we have ever seen in Duel Links, and of course one of the best fusion decks currently in the game. They have an overwhelming presence when they manage to get out their fusion monsters, and even though their main trap card, Cybernetic Overflow, got hit by the ban list and is now limited to 2, it is still one of the best tools they have in their arsenal, and of course is played at all the deck lists at the max possible copies. Cyber Dragons can suffer from bad opening hands, but with the correct plays available, they can beat almost every deck in the tier list, even the top meta ones. So undoubtedly for me, Cyber Dragons can get multiple King of Games per season, and if you invested in them when their main box came out, you made a great decision because we can all see by now that the deck has withstood the passage of time. Next up, I have Ritual Beasts. Another great investment, of course, a deck that came from a mini box and, like Cyber Dragons, is another fusion strategy. We had a surprise ban list hit for Ritual Beasts, which actually caused them to disappear from the meta for a couple of months, but just because of their amazing combo potential and floating, players would not actually leave them to the side for a long time. Now they have a very respectful presence in the meta, and I think they can even be versatile with what skills they are using. Of course, we can see them using nerfed skills like Sealed Tombs to deal, of course, with graveyard effects, but they can also use another very meta-relevant skill at the moment, See You Later. Next up, I have Dark Magician, a fan favorite archetype, of course, that dominated the meta for a pretty long time. Now it is tier 3. I don't really think that eliminates the possibility for Dark Magician to move up the tier list once again, and that is for a couple of reasons. 1. Dark Magician as an archetype has tons of support that we haven't seen in Duel Links yet, and 2. This is not really the best time for Dark Magician because as a balanced control deck, it can find a lot of problems facing top tier competition. And that is one of the main reasons I have Dark Magician tier 3, it struggles against the top of the meta. That does not make Dark Magician a bad deck for a push at King of Games though. The combo of Rod, Navigation and Circle is still one of the best and most consistent in the game, even though Rod is now semi-limited at 2 copies. We also see Dark Magician run some of the best staples like Canadia, Fiendish Chain or Karma Cat, and of course the classic Dark Magician fusions. The deck now uses balance, and I think it is probably the best skill if you want to have the most consistent deck list possible. Next up is Blue Eyes White Dragon, another very popular archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, but I think in Duel Links there is a big problem with Blue Eyes. It is actually used more as a cash cow than Dark Magician, because in order to build a Blue Eyes deck optimally, you actually need to waste a ton of gems, and the deck you get in the end is not even a top tier deck. I think that is a big problem with Blue Eyes right now, that moves players away from the deck to play something else, like let's say for example Ritual Beasts or even Syranui. That doesn't make Blue Eyes bad though. I think the strategy can be considered a bit old-fashioned at the moment, and Blue Eyes misses that something that will actually put it in the main meta conversation again. Of course, it has now boosted consistency with cards of consonants and has very strong monsters, But the problem with Blue Eyes is that if the opponent can easily take care of those monsters with some distraction effects from trap cards or even monsters in this current meta, then Blue Eyes can have really big problems recovering from such plays. Moving on to tier 2, the first deck here is Black Wings. I think Black Wings are actually the deck that I have changed the most between tiers throughout my tier list videos. I have put them tier 1, 2 and 3 and consistently changed them between months. They are a high risk, high reward deck, very aggressive and also pretty expensive to build, but I think unlike Blue Eyes, if you invested in Black Wings, you actually made the right choice because the deck has been relevant for so long, can adapt in different metas and can also be very competitive while doing it. They're one of the best synchro decks that came out of the whole 5Ds era, and of course they are the archetype of Crow Hogan. The main skill they are running is peak performance, although we see that skill always change for something better to deal with the meta like Syranui, or maybe when Thunder Dragons were top of the meta, we saw Black Wings take different chances and different approaches in order of course to take some wins. Next up I have Heroes. One very versatile archetype that is also very popular, but in my opinion, when we officially get Stratos in a main box, its popularity is about to skyrocket. Stratos will make the deck way more consistent for many players that lack him because he is only a selection box ultra rare right now. You cannot get him any other way. So I think that Konami will release Stratos before or during the anniversary in a main box. So either next main box or during the anniversary. Stratos won't only skyrocket the popularity of Heroes, it will also skyrocket sales for that specific main box. He is a crazy attraction for Heroes, and I believe that he's also pretty important for the deck to do good. Now, other than Stratos, I believe that the deck has been relevant for so long because it can be played offensively, it can be played as a fusion deck, it can be played as a control deck, it has many different options during the duel. And Masked Hero Anki with Mask Change of course is just an amazing combo at the end of the day. Next up I have Magician Girls Invoked, a hybrid deck of course that pretty recently surfaced in the meta of Duel Links. I have played the deck multiple times on my channel, a very fun deck and a very good deck as well. I believe it is pretty obvious to see why the deck is gaining steam, since we have Invoked, even with Alistair limited to 3, a very good engine, probably the best we have ever seen in Duel Links. Then, on top of that, we have the Magician Girls utility box. They can do so many things for so many different situations. They have searching, drawing power, special summoning ability, stalling and defensive ability, you name it. And of course they synergize perfectly with the invoked fusion monsters. We have Fire for Purgatrio, Earth for Magellanica and Water for Cocytus, so you can understand why the deck is doing good. On top of all that though, the deck can also run staple cards. You can play Karma Cat, Canadia, Floodgate, Fiendish Chain, Ballista Squad, you name it. Pretty much it is an Element Sabers Invoked hybrid number 2. That's what this is, but it is still not unbeatable of course, otherwise it would be tier 1. Very good deck though, it has its weaknesses I believe, it can struggle with consistency sometimes, but other than that it has an answer for many situations, but again it can be outpowered by specific decks in the meta. Next up I have Thunder Dragons, a deck that actually got completely destroyed by a past ban list, but now with Dragon Dark back in its toolkit, it is also back in the meta. I think Konami was way too harsh against Thunder Dragons, they were very good, but for a short while, probably a couple of months, before the ban hammer completely destroyed them. Now with Dragon Dark back, they are actually again meta, although I do not think the pure version of Thunder Dragons is amazing. I think that hybrids with either Light Swords or Cristrons are the way to go. Light Swarms of course have a better combination with Thunder Dragons, and I think if you want to be a very competitive Duel Links player, that's the route you need to go for Thunder Dragons. Levianeer is still very good, Dragon Duo of course also very good. They're a very aggressive deck as well, and the deck of course still has its explosiveness. We're moving up to tier 1, and of course this is the top tier, so the first deck here is Karakuri. Now, when I left, Karakuri were nowhere to be found, so I'm pretty surprised to see them be that good when I actually come back to Duel Links. Now, of course, they get new support, so that is a big contributing factor, but other than that, Karakuri always had many traits that indicate a top tier deck. First of all, they have drawing power, then they have decent boss monsters, and of course, they can swarm the field with summons and also synchro summons, and dictate the pace while controlling the field. That is very important and what makes Karakuri pretty good. They also have a unique skill that they can swap monster positions, which is also nice, and all these traits can also be found in the next deck we're gonna talk about. And that deck of course is Syranui. In my opinion, the best deck in the game, even with their limitations. Of course, some of the bans have been reversed by Konami, but they do still have limitations and they are thriving right now in the meta. They can be played in different ways, they can run staples. As I said for Karakuri, the same applies here. The deck can swarm the field, control the pace, have very good monster effects. Syranui can synchro summon from the graveyard, they have banish effects, so of course all these things are an extraordinary combination for a tier 1 deck. Now, many people hate Syranui since they have been meta relevant for so long and say they should be destroyed in the next ban list. I completely disagree, but I could analyze that in a completely different video. This is a tier list video and I think it is very obvious why Syranui deserves the tier 1 spot. And the final deck for this month's tier list, Crystons. Another of course synchro deck and a machine based deck with water monsters that actually had a crisis of identity a couple of months back when I was still playing because of some nerfs to the skills they were using. Obviously the main skill for Crystons was for the longest Transcendent Crystals from Jesse, but after the nerf they did not really know what to use. Of course they were still a very good deck with combos and good synchro summoning monsters that could also of course control the field, but they lost a part of their identity. Now they are still using Mythic Depths since they are a water deck, but at the same time they are doing very good using level duplication, so of course we have another synchro deck at the top of the meta. Now, even though we are in the Zexal world era, it is not yet time for XZ monsters and XZ strategies to take over since we don't really have a lot to play with. But be certain, sooner or later, their time will come. And that's my tier list for the month of November. Hopefully you like these videos. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.